make TFR what it is today, we've completely removed all banner ads and commercials from our website too. And for our top donors, we're offering lifetime memberships as a way of saying thank you. Visit truthfrequencyradio.com/donate for full details. And remember, wherever you are, make it TFR.
With SRN News, I'm Keith Peters in Washington. Former President Jimmy Carter has undergone the first of several treatments for his melanoma cancer, which has now spread to his brain. The former president will drastically roll back his work schedule once his treatment begins.
I'll try as best I can to continue my work as a professor at Emory and to attend some of the meetings, but I would say that the rest of my plans will be determined by my consultations with the doctors and what I need to do to get adequate treatment for the melanoma.
Former President Carter is 90 years of age. Also at SRNnews.com, GOP presidential candidate Jeb Bush is stepping up the attacks on frontrunner Donald Trump. Today in New Hampshire, the former Florida governor explained the differences between Trump and himself.
I'm a proven conservative with a record. He isn't. I cut taxes every year. He's proposed the largest tax increase in mankind's history, not just our own country's history. I have been consistently pro-life. He, until recently, was for partial birth abortion.
Meanwhile, campaigning in Michigan, GOP presidential candidate Marco Rubio jokes that the race for the Republican nomination is a little crowded.
You're going to get to see presidential candidates. In fact, if you get a chance to run into a Republican that's running for president, right now it's about 1 out of 5 Republicans, you should ask them, why are you running for president?
While in South Carolina, GOP presidential candidate Bobby Jindal says he's relying on substance, not sound bites, to win support in the race for the White House.
If you want to be recognized on national TV, you say outlandish things. I think it takes a lot more work to actually answer the tough questions. I've got the backbone, the bandwidth, the experience to get this job done.
It was a rough day on Wall Street as the Dow Jones Industrial Average plunged 358 points to 16,991. The Nasdaq dropping 142. The S&P lower by 44. Oil up to $41.14 a barrel. This is SRN News.
You are now tuned into the Truth Frequency.
We are TFR. TFR.
Truth Frequency Radio.
The Rundown, Monday through Friday, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. Check out therundownlive.com. Mike P. Kriston H. The Rundown, Monday through Friday, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. Check out therundownlive.com.
What up, guys? We are live here. It is Thursday, August 20th, live here on the Rundown Live, rundownlive.com. Mike Pachesney, Kriston Harris, and we have a guest tonight, Kriston, don't we?
Sure do. Talk radio show host and physicist Brooks Agnew is rejoining the Rundown Live. Last time he joined us, we talked about how this planet might actually be hollow and how waves can start earthquakes and many other interesting things like HAARP. So I'm really excited to have him on. We're going to talk CERN. Does it have the potential to create stargates, or is there a real danger with this particle accelerator? And we're all going to get a crash course 101, I guess, on physics maybe with him here today.
Yeah, and I know we've heard lots of rumors about this CERN thing and
Steve Quayle
how it can create black holes and who knows, even potentially even mess with your emotions. It's
maybe that's where Bigfoot comes from, Mike. He comes from the portal at CERN.
I don't know where the hell you guys got that from. Bigfoot going through dimensions. That was all new to me.
Yeah, that's pretty new too to me. But I think it has to do with a symbol that's found on a lot of the walls, and that's the way certain individuals like to interpret those spiral symbols. But who knows what it all means? But
we're not going to be talking about
no that. Bigfoot today. No worries.
We will not be talking about.
Nor do we
Bigfoot
really have a belief in Bigfoot. I don't think.
No. I mean, I'm all for seeing some evidence. I mean, show me some evidence. I'm all for that, but not really my thing.
Do you have big feet? Just start asking people if they have big feet. That'd probably be horrible idea, Mike.
Although I am interested in like extraterrestrials and aliens. I don't know if they exist, but I'm a little more interested in that theory and subject.
We can ask if they're interdimensional, or if interdimensional travel is more likely than, let's say, time travel or traveling to a distant planet, because, they're parallel universes. So I think like I said, there's a lot of interesting things we can talk about. I know that I believe I read a couple days ago in Business Times that CERN actually created antimatter, which I don't know what that all involves, but I thought antimatter comes from black holes, Mike.
Yeah, I really don't know. And what is, like, the actual purpose of CERN? Like, what is the true purpose of even building this device?
Well, I believe it has to do with crashing particles together at a very fast speed. And when they crash them, then they can then diagnose what's inside of them, much like dissecting a frog or a animal to find out how the insides work. So I think that was the original claim, that it was being used to crash particles together head on, and it goes faster than the speed of light. I know it crashes them faster than the speed of light, which I didn't know that we could go faster than the speed of light until a few years ago when they said we could, I guess.
Well, it's apparently all going to be for our safety, that's for sure.
Well, yeah, particle accelerators for your safety.
It doesn't matter, though, because, we're going to have D's Nuts as our president here coming up in a few years.
Idiocracy, bro.
It's bizarre, the kind of political spectrum we live in, and, the whole theatricals of this presidential election is, just really, like you said, idiocracy. I mean, when you have Trump and D's Nuts leading the polls, I mean, it really puts a stain on America, I think.
Well, and we might actually be seeing the end of Hillary, though, due to it. The whole Clinton empire might be something. But
I doubt it.
She'll have some prominent job someplace else.
Trump is a plant for Hillary. He's there to destroy the Republicans and make it so they don't have any type of chance. And it's working. I mean, because the average conservative voter is really infatuated with Trump because, he is saying what he needs to say. And, build the wall, exactly. The great, what were they calling it? The Trump wall? The Great Trump
Wall of Trump?
Oh, that's what it was. The Great Wall of Trump, yes.
I mean, do we really need walls? The truth is do we really need the TSA or the NSA or DHS? None of them really have stopped any terrorism attacks, but are just used to spy on American citizens, and mostly innocent citizens. So I don't really understand the whole need for all these walls. We fund ISIS. We created Al-Qaeda. So why don't we just stop funding the government, and we'll stop funding ISIS and Al-Qaeda? I'm not saying don't pay your taxes, but, some nations have found that to be a solution to get their government back in check. We heard Donald Trump claim that politicians only do what the money tells them to do. And he's really, I think, getting a lot of these independents out there that are just sick of the system, and they think Donald Trump's the answer because he has money. He's not going to take money from anybody else, and he's going to do what's right.
And he's really just a plant, like I said, for Hillary, and it's going to work beautifully for her. And this whole server thing, it really is such a non-issue. I think Jesse Ventura said it best when he was on the Alex Jones show the other day. Like, there's so many other issues that matter so much more, like for instance, 9/11, what took place with the stand-down orders, and the video that went viral the other day about Cheney saying that he shot down a plane or gave the order to shoot down a plane. That kind of stuff matters to me a lot more than whether or not Hillary had private email servers.
Well, if they blew up an airplane, that would explain the debris over several miles of an airplane. Maybe the airplane that they made a movie of.
It's just all really fiction, and it's there to keep us distracted, much like all the entertainment in the world. And now the presidential election is just more entertainment. That's really what we're looking at these days.
It's reality TV, except they try to make you think that you actually have a say in the process. But like all these other Delphi meeting tactics and other type of election mind control tactics, you don't really have a choice. You have an opinion, but that opinion really isn't heard or represented by the people that you elect in majority. There's a few people that are halfway decent out there, like a Rand Paul or Justin Amash, but still, it's enabling force. It's halfway
decent. Which Ron Paul, did you see he endorsed Rand finally?
Well, I think Rand needs all the endorsement he can get at this point. Just being honest.
I saw somebody on Facebook posted as a joke. Remember when Rand ran for president, and basically, it's like it's already over for him, man. It's already over for Paul. It really is. I mean, he's literally has no chance.
Well, that's because Donald Trump is in. Who really has a chance as long as Trump is in the Republican Party? And
they're trying to bully him out, but I think that's going to backfire. It's going to backfire.
They're not going to invite him to the debates, and eventually what's going to happen is it's going to force him to run for third party. And at that point, it's just giving the election to whoever the liberal candidate is. And I don't believe it's going to be Bernie Sanders, although a Rand Paul versus Bernie Sanders would be an ideal election for both sides, freedom and, I'll
tell you right now, as far as my observation poll goes, just from observing the public, especially where we're at here in the Milwaukee area, I see mostly Bernie Sanders bumper stickers, and I've seen a few Hillary stickers, but that's it.
A lot of Scott Walker, though.
I don't see any Scott Walker.
But I think they're all governor ones. So
I don't see any Scott Walker presidential stickers. Or
I don't see those either.
And you know what else is interesting with Scott Walker? You didn't see much of that either when he had to do the re-election campaign when they had that big controversy. The what was it called? The recall election. It seems like the Scott Walker supporters are incognito. They like to just hang out in the darkness and support
I think that
him.
whole thing was just a waste of taxpayer money anyways, but I can understand people's upset and their right to do that.
Obviously, I would hope that the elections should be accountable, but we all have learned that they're not, and it doesn't matter, and the people with the biggest wallets get in, and who's got the biggest wallets now? You would think that it's Trump, but when we talk about the Clintons, they have the most favors to call in, and that gives them the biggest wallet, and that gives them the inside track to the presidency. But, that being said, none of this has anything to do with CERN or what the hell's going on underground there.
I don't even know how we started talking about this. See how easy it is to get caught up in this analytical
because I brought up D's
garbage.
nuts.
Yeah, D's nuts. Look at he's already taking over our program.
Well, why not?
D's nuts later on the rundown live.
I won't be voting for D's nuts or Doe's nuts, but the thing is, he's obviously gaining mass appeal because people love balls and nuts.
Yeah, Mike votes for no nuts.
Yes, I will not be voting for any balls or any nuts. But that being said, we should probably talk about the site, and then we'll have a real conversation with Brooks Agnew.
Yeah, guys, if you haven't had a chance to, check out the rundownlive.com. We have new information and articles up there daily. Mike and I put them up and out there. They're by activists from around the globe, people who actually have their feet on the ground, and many of which have joined us on the Rundown Live. You can find those in our past episodes. Many of those past episodes are available on our website. And in fact, I think all of them are. We have a nifty little search bar up there on the right-hand side. Check it out. Search the Rundown Live. It'll usually bring you to our episodes. As well as when you're visiting our website, share our articles on your Facebook and your Twitter and all the different social media networks out there. That helps people become informed on issues that matter, not like the ones we were talking about in the beginning of the show, but real issues like things like CERN we will be getting into later on in the show here today. Also, guys, if you're looking to support us, the website gives you that ability as well. Check out all the banners on there. We have private internet access. Private internet access allows Mike and I to surf the internet anonymously. We get to check our emails, download, conversate, do cool things like avoid Reddit bans and video game bans. It's $39.95, covers 5 devices for a whole year. And we're also getting into football season, guys. So if you like to view your games on your device or on the internet and you have a couple blacked out games where you're not allowed to see them if you live in the local area, you can appear as if though you're on a different side of the country or other side of the world and access these games. So do check it out. And again, it's a great way to support this broadcast. We're 100% listener funded. It's you guys that make this show possible. You can also donate via PayPal from the website. Check that out. We really appreciate any donations. It helps us spread the message of liberty and freedom. Our website also teaches you guys how to access our show in many different ways. We have a live chat. You guys right now can go to your computer and check out the rundownlive.com/live. and that will bring you into our chat, and as well as videos. Sometimes we have videos up there, and you can chat with other like-minded activists or people who don't agree. Sometimes come in the chat. There's a lot of interesting questions that come up in the chat. Check that out. You can also find ways to download us on your cell phone. If you want to catch us live, check out TuneIn Radio. It's a free app available on your cell phone. TuneIn Radio, just search The Rundown Live. You'll get Mike and I and all the other amazing broadcasters here on Truth Frequency Radio. That includes Popeye, Brooks Agnew, who we're going to have on in a few minutes here, Phoenix Rising, Joe Joseph, and many others. So do support them. Check out their website. Sign up for a membership through Truth Frequency Radio. Support our syndication. They do an awesome job for us. Also, if you want to listen to the Rundown Live, we put out our own app for free. It's available on the Google Play Store, iPhone App Store, the iTunes Store, the Windows Play Store, Amazon.com App Store, as well as we're on Spreaker and Stitcher. Get the app, and the app allows you to download all those past episodes, and including limited edition material that usually is not found on our website or on the web. So do check that out. Get it today, download it. We put it out there for you guys, and it's free. It's really nifty, guys. You can even send us emails from it. Let's say if you catch some news on your cell phone, you can save it and send it right to us straight from the phone. I want to say thank you to all the amazing people that make this possible. FPRN Radio, TFR Radio, YouTube, Wide Awake America. So you guys out there really appreciate all the support and everything you guys have been doing. So we're going to have our guest coming on, Brooks Agnew. He's a physicist, and he's an expert in science in this area. He's been on Jesse Ventura's conspiracy theory, as well as talked on our show about HAARP and how the planet may actually be hollow. But today we're going to get into a much more interesting topic, one that I've been recently introduced to, called CERN. CERN is a particle accelerator where I believe they try to collide particles and make them explode so they can find out what's in them. There's a whole bunch of rumors out there, guys, about stargates and multiple dimensions and different possibilities with this technology, and I brought Brooks on to find out what is really going on with CERN. Brooks Agnew, do we have you with us? I guess we don't have Brooks yet, but I think that it's pretty interesting, this whole CERN thing. It's really
reminds me of Star Wars, Kristan. It really does.
Yeah, really.
Only underground at this point.
It actually goes over a couple different countries. It involves a couple different countries, and the devices, it employs a ridiculous amount of employees as well. And I'm really interested to see what Brooks has to say on the subject. I don't know if we have Brooks Agnew with us yet. Brooks, do we have you yet?
Yes, you do. I am here.
It's a pleasure to have you back, Brooks.
Hi, Mike. Hi, Kristen.
Yeah, how's it going? How have you been?
Busier than a one-legged cat in a litter box.
Oh, boy.
That sounds like a lot of trouble.
Sounds like the best waiting to happen. So we brought you on to talk a little bit about CERN. Can you kind of give us a 101 on what is CERN, starting with, and what's the intended purpose of CERN?
Well, that's good. Both good questions. It's a long project. It's been a long time in the making. You're right. CERN does cover a couple of countries, Switzerland and a little area known as Geneva, kind of crosses the border. But it is built underground for stability because it takes advantage of the stone infrastructure to tie the magnets, the electromagnets into the superstructure of the rock, because these magnets generate a tremendous amount of magnetic pull. And what it basically is like two rings, like Olympics, interlocking one another. And what they do is they load up the front end of it with hydrogen protons, because they're the most massive protons in the periodic chart. Then they strip the electrons off, and that's a real simple process. Just using a positive grid, they just take the electrons off. So now you just have a proton all by itself. Now, normally, those protons at rest are 1 electron volt, just one. So We know what their mass is. We generally know what their size is. And they are, as I said, the largest, most massive protons in the periodic chart. If you fuse two of them together, you get helium, and they are somewhat smaller protons and certainly a little harder to work with in an accelerator. And then what happens is they use the magnetic fields in the first ring to accelerate packets of protons, like groups of racing dogs, I guess, and they bring them up to a certain speed, and then they introduce them into the large ring. Now, the large ring, up until just a short while ago, could make about about 2 or 3 what is known as tera electron volts. We're talking about 10 to the 12th electron volts. So you've now taken this 1 volt up to 1 trillion volts. Not a billion, but a trillion. Way up there. And in doing that, you raise the speed of the proton to about 99% the speed of light. And then the packets are divided up into a figure-8 racetrack, like we used to watch figure-8 racing. It's great as long as none of the cars reach the cross of the figure-8. If they do, well, then the vehicles, school buses, or sometimes trucks carrying boats behind them, crash into one another and the crowd goes wild. And that's what CERN does. It speeds these packets up to 99.999% the speed of light. And then they crash the protons into one another. Now, they'll leave it on for several hours, and in those several hours, they may have about 2 dozen really premium collisions. The rest of them are kind of like pool balls, bouncing off each other. But you really want a good, classic, full head-on collision. And that's pretty rare with something as small as a proton, even though it's packing all that voltage, which means it's extremely massive for a proton. And the cross of that figure-8 where those things come together, that particular section of CERN is packed with detectors. All kinds of low and high frequency detectors. And what they try to do when these two have a full-on head-on collision is they try to capture all the pieces of those protons as they fly apart. And pretty much they have the same particles every time, in pretty much the same proportions every time. So we have enough experience now to know almost, I'd say 99% of what the recipe is for making a proton. However, they're up to now, I believe, 14 tera electron volts. This is an unbelievable amount of power, but it's probably only 1,000th the power that's really needed to see everything a proton is made of. And the goal, you asked, what's the end game of CERN? I think the end game of CERN is to actually figure out how to go the other way, how to go from energy to make a proton, to actually make a proton. It's easy to smash stuff apart, but can we take all the frequencies in the recipe of a proton and put it all together in the right proportions to become God and create matter from energy? That's the end goal.
So what does being able to build a proton give somebody the ability to do? I mean, what can you do with that kind of information?
Well, everything that we see in our universe, all the stars, all the planets, all the gas, everything that's visible in our universe, which makes up, it's generally accepted between 4.5% and maybe 5.5% of the known universe, is made up of protons. The rest is made up of electrons, which we don't really understand electrons at all. We barely understand protons. When you combine a proton and an electron, you form a neutron, but it's basically the same particle. We understand how they go together. We understand their chemical properties. We understand in combination where they line up on the periodic chart and how they react and what their physical properties are and the chemical properties are, but we don't know how to make a proton. If we could figure that out, we could literally synthesize anything, food, steel, anything, and all we really need is the program. Sort of like a replicator on Star Trek.
I was going to say, it sounded just like Star Trek, Star Wars, like where we're going to be able to have like, all these different cool technologies. But I find it interesting. I saw in, was it the International Business Times that they were talking about antimatter and that they've been able to confirm antimatter as well. What's the difference between matter and antimatter for the rookies out there?
Well, our matter, protons, is made of a positive type of energy, and it's surrounded by a probability cloud of negative particles, which we call electrons. And we generally know where electrons like to hang out. We call them shells and orbitals, and we know how they share between one atom and another to make molecules, and how molecules become larger molecules sharing those electrons. But we're not really sure where the electrons come from. We're not really sure where they go to. We can observe them blinking into and out of our dimension. And Lord knows we can generate electrons like crazy by running magnets past, conductive wire. And we can send it out over wires or over airwaves, and we can use it for all kinds of things like we're using on our computers right now. But we still don't really know what it is. So antimatter runs on a negatively charged solid particle instead of a proton. I guess you would call it a negatron or antimatter. Now, if an antimatter proton comes in contact with a regular matter proton, they do in what we call, in physics, we call this annihilation. That is to say, they get together and instantly turn into pure energy. And it's a tremendous amount of energy for one proton. When we combine two hydrogen protons together by forcing them together in a process we call fusion, each proton loses a little bit of weight to go from a hydrogen proton to a helium proton. And that little bit of weight loss times the speed of light squared is an enormous amount of energy, which we call a fusion or a nuclear explosion. But imagine taking all of the mass of that proton and changing it to pure energy. You're talking about a weapon that would be 50,000 times more powerful than a fusion explosion. And since organizations like DARPA and other organizations have all the money, that is why all universities and all government-run facilities like CERN research stuff like antimatter, because they want to know how to more effectively blow up our enemies.
Isn't that crazy, Brooks? But we're going to be coming into the break here. I wanted to get into some of these alternative dimensions you were talking about. I want to know if this is capable of contacting alternate dimensions. I'm hearing rumors. I don't know if they're conspiracies or what, but we'll talk about it when we come back from the break here. We're here with Brooks Agnew on the rundownlive.com, guys. Get in the chat, rundownlive.com/live. We'll be back in 3 minutes, guys.
Yeah, definitely interesting, Brooks, there. I mean, obviously, we know nothing about CERN. I mean, we're just average guys that know nothing.
Yeah, we don't know. We just know it looks real cool. It's in a figure 8, and that they crash things together there, and that there's a lot of crazy rumors about stargates and, interdimensional communication attempts and all sorts of bizarre stuff.
Yeah, we can cover all that from the, freshman in college standpoint, so we don't get too far out. But there are rumors, and then there's
reality.
There are reality, exactly, and it's a lot more esoteric than people think. And what really fascinates me about this entire project is just how esoteric these scientists seem to be as a community, and what they're really going after. It really reminds me of kind of like the 1930s Nazis when they were
the Tool Society, right?
Yeah,
they talked
exactly.
beings from the Hollow Earth, and they gave them directions on what they needed to do to conquer the world. Yeah, I wouldn't doubt it. It's the same, type of mentality. A lot of this mystery Babylonian religion, and a lot of this bizarre beliefs that stem from a lot of these secret societies. So we can maybe talk about the esoteric beliefs, and that they're kind of superstitious, and that they're going based off of conspiracies.
A lot of people I hear talking about, there's rumors that this could create a black hole as
I heard that too.
I don't know if there's any truth to that. Obviously, that's something that we could ask you about. And then
we can cover that too. There are several levels.
When this machine is running, if you even want to call it that, I've heard rumors that it can actually change people's emotions and affect human beings in different ways.
Yeah, there's also rumors that it makes the actual magnetospheric envelope around the Earth wobble.
Huh. I wouldn't doubt that. Who knows?
And we don't even know, what... I'm sure that's affecting animals and all kinds of stuff, right? That's bizarre.
What kind of equipment do we need to figure that one out?
All right, here we go, guys. 30 seconds. I'm going to pull the network back in.
All right.
Okay.
Similar reasons. Linda Kenyon, Capitol Hill.
Lawyer representing Army Sergeant Bo Bergdahl, who left his infantry post in Afghanistan and was held by the Taliban for 5 years, says statements by Donald Trump about Bergdahl are threatening the soldiers' right to a fair trial. Attorney Eugene Fidel says Bergdahl is charged with desertion, not treason. More details at srnnews.com. I'm Keith Peters in Washington.
Angry Beaver Radio with John Bernard. Saturday.
Bring us in, Kristan.
Truth Frequency Radio.
The Rundown, Monday through Friday, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. Check out therundownlive.com. Mike P. Kristan H. The Rundown, Monday through Friday, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. Check out therundownlive.com.
The rundown.
TheRundownLive.com. We're here with physicist and fellow talk radio show host Brooks Agnew. We've been talking about CERN and a scientific experiment which is colliding particles and protons together to try to find out what's inside. And there's a lot of crazy rumors about this experiment. Some people say it could even cause a black hole. Well, what's your thoughts on that, Brooks?
Well, black holes are interesting. It's a theoretical body that was first thought about in the 40s, and it was added onto by mathematicians like Clerk Maxwell and several really incredibly, I would say, enlightened mathematicians of the latter day. And we have ideas about the properties that black holes have to have. And some of these are, my contemporaries, Stephen Hawking and Dr. Kip Thorne, and We've built some enormous, very sophisticated observatories in the United States called LIGO, or the Laser Interferometer Gravitational Wave Observatories, specifically to try to locate a black hole. As I said, they are theoretical bodies, but here are the general characteristics that we think black holes have to have. First of all, they got to be of a mass at least 4 times our sun in order to create enough gravity after all the hydrogen fuel is used up and the forces of exploding out into space and collapsing into a singularity go out of balance and gravity begins to win the fight. What happens is the mass of the star begins to occupy a smaller and smaller space as it crushes in on itself. Think of taking a solid ball of boron the size of a basketball and crushing it to the size of a BB. I mean, it takes a tremendous amount of force to increase the density of this star from somewhere around 3 or 4 grams per cubic centimeter to about 18 grams per cubic centimeter. It puts all of the matter in very close proximity with one another. The gravity becomes so intense that the electrons that, as I said in the first segment, are happily floating around all those protons can no longer stay away from those protons. They get sucked into the proton. First a few million, then a few billion, then a few trillion, and then all of a sudden, wham, all those electrons fall into the protons, and you get a concussion called a supernova. That cleaves off the atmosphere of that sun. The energy pretty much consumes all the planets in that sun's solar system and turns them into pure energy. We have seen this happen a few times in our galaxy. They surprise us. And fortunately, they happened like 20 or 50 or 1,000 light years ago, and they're not really in our neighborhood. If we had one in our neighborhood, it would be the last thing we ever saw in the sky. But that's the theory of a black hole. Now, what CERN is rumored to have the ability to do is to take a tiny amount of matter, like 1 proton, and implode that on itself using the magnetic fields and the acceleration of 2 particles hitting one another. Obviously, that is not enough mass to worry us at all. The whole planet isn't going to, suck into that single proton like a Bugs Bunny cartoon. But we can learn about the properties of a black hole. For instance, one of the theories that we suspect about black holes is that they spin at their maximum speed and that they're perfectly spherical. Now, there are some physicists like myself that have published papers that say, well, black holes, especially if they're supermassive, they're not spherical. They flatten out like a dinner plate, like a saucer. And the center of that plate becomes a Heisenberg uncertainty, which means we don't really know where the singularity we don't really know where the singularity is in that, and it creates a kind of window or an open to be able to go from one point in the galaxy or universe to another point, or one dimension to another dimension. And this is something that CERN is at least scheduled to try and test on an atomic level.
So does that mean that there's actually other dimensions out there? I've
Absolutely.
heard rumors of this, and I've also heard rumors that they may be able to communicate or attempt to communicate with other dimensions. I don't know what kind of luck they may have with that, or may they even be able to communicate with someone. I have no idea, but it's an interesting thought all around. When you start thinking about communicating with other dimensions and what might be out there.
Well, it's not communication in the way that you're thinking. It is communication in the sense that we're passing information, which is basically a photon, from one dimension to another. My colleague Stephen Hawking wrote a paper 20 years ago that said that at the edge of the event horizon of a black hole, a photon can pass really close to that, and it will clone itself, and it will lose the clone into the black hole. So in essence, in his paper, he said, we're leaking or losing information from our universe into someplace else, another dimension or another universe. That's information. I wrote a paper 6 or 7 years after that, and it turned into one of the early posters, which is basically a one-page theory for CERN. And that is that if that is true, and let's just assume that that hypothesis has some merit, then the inverse is true as well, that particles are leaking or entering our universe from another universe or another dimension. And when I was visiting LIGO, the Laser Interferometer Gravitational Wave Observatory, in Hanford, Washington, I was talking with Dr. Fred Raab, that's spelled R-A-A-B, who was the managing physicist of that facility. He confirmed for me that that observatory is detecting particles popping into our dimension from another dimension. That's how sensitive that instrument is. So there is merit to Stephen Hawking's paper and my paper as well. So this is something that CERN is scheduled to try to repeat physically.
That's incredible to think that we have that ability to do that.
Yeah, it makes me think of like the internet in a less scientific manner, that there's actually data being transferred from point A to point B. It's just that you don't really know where it's coming from or where it's going.
And we don't really know what it says.
Right, exactly.
We don't have the code, but with enough practice, we'll figure it out.
Yeah, that's incredible. You mentioned during the break an esoteric type of science behind this. What did you want to get into that a little bit?
Well, sure. I mean, the in any group of hardcore theoretical physicists, you're going to get a faction of them that don't really stick to the science, but they bring a little bit of let's just call it esotericism or religion into it. I mean, they have a statue of Shiva outside this facility. So it kind of gives you an idea of the sense of humor or the sense of awareness that some of these scientists have. And they have realized that as antimatter or the precursors to antimatter are formed, that because it's negative matter and it's negative energy, it tends to have a negative effect on the biology or the sentient beings that happen to be within range of this field. If you make a positive electric field, you can put people in a powerful state of euphoria. But if you create a negative field, you can put people, especially if they have no self-control over what they're thinking or what the forces around them might be, into a completely different state of mind.
Yeah, that's very interesting to think that this whole experiment can affect emotions, affect how people feel. It can definitely tap into alternate dimensions out there. But what about the weaponized aspect of this? What kind of weapon could this make? You said it can blow up like probably planets. It sounds crazy. What would they use all this for? Would they use it to create energy? Do you think that they could use it to actually at one time travel interdimensionally or teleportation, or who knows? What are the limits on this?
Yeah, there are really no limits, and you're exactly right. You could do teleportation instead of sending an image from one place to another. You could actually send a physical copy of the object, or even eventually a being from one place to another.
Yeah, that whole thought process is just crazy that's possible. But like I said, there's a lot of crazy conspiracies out there on CERN, and it's really great to get another viewpoint on it. And in your opinion, what do you think will come out of this? What do you think that we will get out of CERN here?
Well, one of my reasons for being outspoken at all on the project is that we gain some wisdom before we figure out how to actually push the button. I did my postgraduate work at Oak Ridge in Tennessee, and as such, I got to work with some of the officers that were around during the Manhattan Project, and I got that perspective. And the interesting thing is that at that time, America was under a tremendous amount of pressure. We were nearing bankruptcy. We were fighting enormous wars on two fronts, and we were getting ready to start a third. And Truman had inherited a hell of a mess. And when it was discovered that Trinity, that was the first atomic explosion, which was what we would call today a dirty bomb, when it was relayed to Washington that it works, within 24 hours, Truman had drafted an executive order, and that team was putting together two weapons, an atom bomb and a fusion bomb, and they're going to be dropped not on the Japanese army, but on the Japanese people. And fortunately, thank God, of the 2,700 something atomic explosions that mankind has done on this planet, those are the only two that have ever been used in battle. But the comment in Washington was, the damn thing works. And the next thing we know, we were dropping it on people. So hopefully we have some wisdom that if we learn that we can make and contain antimatter in a shell or a field or a rifle of some kind, hopefully somebody in Washington doesn't say, the damn thing works, let's use it on somebody.
Make it into a super gun and make people disintegrate and disappear, That's crazy. Could CERN possibly cause an earthquake? I know you mentioned that it might mess with the Earth's magnetic poles and things of that nature. Could this actually cause earthquakes? Because we were seeing an increase of earthquakes around the planet.
It's a good question. Earthquakes and volcanoes have been on the rise, and it's been somewhat exponential since 1985, both the intensity and the frequency of earthquakes. And statistically, there's not enough data to say, every time we fire CERN up, we get a rash of powerful earthquakes and volcanoes going off. Coincidentally, there have been some heavy earthquakes, and there have been volcano eruptions or volcanic eruptions during the time that CERN has been operated at high power. And by high power, I'm going to say somewhat over 10 tera electron volts. And they're trying for more power now. It's a matter of routing more cable in and making sure that the magnets aren't going to rip themselves loose from their moorings like they did last year. I have a feeling that they're going to keep ramping up the power until some kind of cause and effect is determined. And anytime you concentrate that much magnetism in one place, it is going to have an effect on the planet. What it is remains to be seen, but my gut tells me it won't be pretty.
Yeah, that doesn't sound very pretty at all, Brooks. I have to ask you, you mentioned Shiva. What does Shiva have to do with CERN, if anything at all?
Well, really, it has nothing to do with it, but Shiva is the ancient god of destruction. Shiva comes in and vanquishes the enemy, down to the last skull, down to the last tooth. So to have the goddess or the god of war outside your facility as a major edifice is a little disconcerting.
Well, it sounds like they're going to use it for some kind of peaceful, great invention, like free energy for everyone, doesn't it, Brooks? It gives you
I feel a lot more comfortable if it was a Stay Puft Marshmallow Man out there. But as I said, these scientists don't really care. As long as their grant money comes in, as long as they get to publish their paper and they get their professorships and their PhDs, because these are half grad students and half junior professors that are working on this thing. There are a few people who really know how to do stuff, and they're telling everyone else how to put things together and run things. But as far as the wisdom to know when we can do something and when we shouldn't do something, I don't think it's there.
Well, who has that oversight, Brooks?
Yeah, right.
Like, who's the man in charge that can push the
button? Who's funding this thing? Yeah.
It changes hands from time to time, and I can't remember the guy that's over it right now, But it is not. It is not what you might think. It is more overseeing the budget and overseeing, time schedules and getting everybody's experiments that have been drawn up and submitted for funding scheduled and performed. It's not, throwing up the red flag or the yellow flag saying, hey, maybe we shouldn't apply this much power to it because these are other effects we've seen around the planet. That's pretty much left up to us. And, there are a lot of us screaming, but, there's only a handful of us with the credibility around the planet that they'll even listen to.
Yeah, the whole subject of CERN brings in so many conspiracies. I know a lot of people talk about the logo looking to have 666 in the symbolism there. I don't know. I looked at it and I'm like, boy, anyone can make anything out of that symbol. You know, I just find that interesting. And then there's people out there who are trying to tie it into this new fear-mongering September 23rd, 2015 conspiracy about it being some kind of like war holiday in history. So I don't know much about that conspiracy, but I do know that there's some people that have mentioned it in CERN forums when I did do my research, and I have no idea what September 23rd, 2015 has to do with anything, but it seems to be popping up more and more in news, and people, it's almost like the 2012 thing all over again.
Well, they're tying it in with Rosh Hashanah, they're tying it in with blood moons, they're tying it in with some guy that folds $20 bills in strange ways. I mean, I see all of this. I just call it coincidence hunters, going into place. And we had the same thing with 2012. And Lord knows I wrote 1,500 pages on the subject. And I told people it's not all doom and gloom. There is an awakening that happens, but we got to take advantage of it. Many are called, but few choose. We can let the opportunity go by.
Well, that's true. What about time travel in CERN? Is there any possibility of that being explored with CERN? Will it give us the ability to, stretch the fabric of time or go back in time or ahead to the future?
Of course it would. I mean, from a theoretical physicist's point of view, time is just an observation. Time is distance in space. When we observe space from the speed of a photon, there is no distance. Everything at the speed of light is, mass goes to infinity. Another way of looking at it is that distance collapses to zero, which means from the perspective of the speed of light, the Big Bang never happened. The universe is still the singularity it was, and there's no distance between any stars or any galaxies, and nothing's accelerating anywhere. It is only the observation of time that makes the universe, the 4.5 or 5% that we observe, even exist. And the only being in the universe that can observe is us, or God. I suppose God could look at the universe all by himself, but it's our perspective from a theoretical point of view that makes the universe exist.
We're in a snow globe, Brooks. That's what's really going on here. It's all the Matrix. There's a lot of scientists that believe that everything is one and zeros and that we're really living in the Matrix. And this whole environment from our DNA to the planets around us was all created in some orderly fashion, and it wasn't by chance. And I think there's a lot of people out there more and more that are believing, whether it's God or a different being like Shiva, that this wasn't by chance, that a lot of this stuff does point to some kind of design or intelligent design. And I'm not saying that's where I put my eggs. I'm just saying this is evidence of it,
Yeah, but as intelligent beings inside that intelligent creation, our observation affects the creation. And it's really our average sentience that makes the universe what it is today. The idea is to shift the average sentience of all the beings in it so that the universe changes. If we want it to change, if we want a different universe, we want a different future, or even a different past, it's totally up to us.
we definitely could have a very different future. We could have a very advanced technological future, even pharmaceutically. There's so much that's held back by government. It seems like government, holds back science. Government destroys education. It destroys the financial system. It just seems like a free market system would be best, especially when it comes with science. But then again, at what point should people say, just because we can make it, should we? Like now we're talking animal-human hybrids and all this other bizarre stuff that's out there. Transhumanism. They want to merge man and machine. And there was Google came out recently and said that it may be possible to live to be 500 years old. It's just amazing how far technology has come. But I'm sure that it's not going to be available to everyone.
Well, you're probably right. Unless we learn how to control our drive to reproduce, we would quickly outstrip the planet of resources. You're right. And maybe that's why a being that lives, let's say, 35,000 years would have a completely different perspective on, marrying at 16 years old and having 12 kids. But we don't have that perspective yet. If we poured an endless amount of milk and honey on our planet right now, we would breed like bacteria and we would destroy this world forever. So,
well, some of us would like to colonize other planets and build underneath the ground, and there's plenty of other great progressive ideas out there that we could accomplish if we put our minds to it, though, Brooks. And I think that's what you're getting at. It really takes a mindset. It takes a form of energy to really get everyone into that mindset. And it takes a bunch of good people to really come out and say, hey, we could use this for the good of men. Look at Tesla, though. Look how look how he ended up. He isn't even in the history books, I think, in some schools.
Yeah, he ended up kind of schizophrenic in his later life because he had so many amazing ideas that could provide free energy. He already provided ideas which provided energy for pay, but then he also had ideas for, terrible weaponry, and he was torn between all those ideas. And there were different, forces that wanted access to different aspects of his technology. Obviously, and you're right, Mike, and what you have to do is gain control over the ability to live within the energy set of the planet you happen to be on. And I'm totally with you as far as colonizing other planets, although for at least 20 light years in every direction, we haven't found another planet that we could live on the surface. We'd have to live inside that planet. Mars, or even some of the planets around Alpha Centauri, which would take us probably 10, 15 years to get to. We'd have to live on the interior of the planets instead of the exterior of the planets because our human bodies are just too frail. They're barely hardy enough to live on the surface of this planet. The average person in America only spends 15% of their time outdoors. It's a pretty tough environment.
Yeah, you go live in the swamp, you might get some kind of bacteria, or who knows what's going to get you.
Martian disease, everyone becomes cannibals, they start eating each other. That's what's going to happen on that Mars 1 mission. Somebody's going to go cannibal, go crazy, and start eating some of the other participants, if that even happens.
Well, they can grow lettuce now, so they'll be fine.
Well, with a proton generator, we'll just make food on another planet. But, I would think that people would spend more time looking at how to colonize other planets than eugenics. But, Brooks, why don't you tell us on what you're working on and plug your stuff real quick? We're coming to the end of the show here.
Okay. Well, in my day job, of course, we're working on the electric trucks, the Condor, which you can learn all about it at ev-fleet.com, or just go to Google and put in electric pickup truck. We're the only electric pickup truck in the world. So that's a pretty exciting project. We've been working on it now about 7 years, and it's just about to go into mass production. I have 6 Amazon bestsellers out there. You can find out about all that just by going to x2radio.com. And then every Sunday night between 8 and 11 p.m., like you guys, I'm right here on Truth Frequency Radio Network.
Well, Brooks, it was great to have you on. And real quick before the music kicks in, what's your thought? Philadelphia experiment, do you think it really happened or no?
I have a tendency to believe it really happened. There's a lot of evidence that something crazy was going on out there.
Yeah, Tesla and Einstein worked on that, and I know Tesla always had dual purpose for a lot of his experiments because he couldn't afford to do it on his own, just like the free electricity and the radio tower where J.P. Morgan made him pull it down. But guys, Brooks Agnew, check him out, therundownlive.com. Same bad time, same bad channel.
Thanks a lot, Brooks. X Squared Radio. We're going to have to get you back on sometime and talk about the electric trucks. Thanks a lot, Brooks.
Thank you.
We'll be back next week, guys. Rundownlive.com. Phoenix Rising's coming up next. Truth Frequency Radio.